Let's move on to one that's a lot more middle ground. I think we can both agree is a pretty middle ground case.
Okay.
B3-2.
Really? Really?
Really?
I was gonna put that in A.
Okay, I have it in B. There's 3 things that it does especially well, and I will agree on how great those things are. The execution, the killer's plan, and the body discovery are fantastic.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think Ryoma's body discovery is probably the best in the series.
It's one of the most surprising. You don't really see anything that you don't usually
You know
see
something's gonna happen, but the way it happens is still shocking. That's what really gets me about it, because like it's one of those things you know they're building up to something. You know something's gonna go wrong. But when that reveal happens, you're like, whoa. I expected something, I did not expect that.
It's like a more reasonable version of that one meme from the Sonic movie where Eggman says, I did not expect that, but I was expecting not to expect something, so it doesn't count.
yeah, pretty much. Like, because the game kind of leads you to believe, like, oh, yeah, they're setting up for a kill. Surely they're gonna subvert this, and they do, but they do it by basically delivering on that expectation in the most extreme way possible.
Yeah. And then there's Kurumi's plan, which I know you told me was one of the smartest kills in the series, and I mostly agree.
Okay, here's the thing.
It was very...
Since I said that, I've kind of changed my mind about that, and here's why. Remember, the viewers are gonna have no context for this unless you're in my server, but like, a couple days ago, weeks ago, I don't know, I brought up a question of like, why does everybody try to make a big deal of the body discovery? Why don't they just, like, leave the body where it is? And, like, it would leave a lot less evidence behind. And here's the thing. While Kurumi's plan was extremely smart, and I wholeheartedly agree, I still stand by the fact that her execution of the plan was nearly perfect, save for, like, 1 or 2 tiny little missteps that she couldn't have done anything about.
Like the evidence that she left in the pool?
Yeah, the little scrap of cloth.
The piece of glove?
Yeah. There was nothing she could have done about that, but here's the thing. Ever since I started thinking about that, I realized Kurumi probably would have gotten away with it if she didn't try to plan it so that people would know that he was dead during that magic show. I don't think they ever would have caught her. Because, okay, hear me out. Imagine this hypothetical scenario. Kurumi plans the killing since the reveals of the motive videos, right? She goes and talks to Ryoma, who admits that, yes, I'm okay with dying, and that's been very clear throughout the earlier chapter as well. So she knows that he's the person to go to. She plans to kill him, and she does. Everything up until that point in the plan was pretty much left the way it is. Now imagine if she had just drowned him in the sink and left him there. And didn't do anything else about it. It would have taken at least a day, at least, for them to find him. Just to find him, let alone investigate. That leaves a significantly larger window for people to not have alibis. Because as it stands, she is relying on the fact that she's basically relying on the fact that she knows what everyone was doing during the time when she committed the murder. And here's the problem with that. While, yes, it is kind of smart to have that in mind of like, oh yeah, I know this person was doing this person was doing that. It gives you a better idea of the situation. The problem with that is that it also gives the people who are going to solve the case a better idea of the situation. If she had just left his body there, there would have been at least a couple of hours that went by before they even realized he was gone. And on top of that, he's in his lab. People are not walking by there on a regular basis. It's not like he was left in a hallway or the gym or a mutual area. He was basically left in his room. It would have taken a while before people found him, Yes, it would have been one of the first places people looked when they found out he was missing, but the point is that they would not have noticed him immediately. And that alone, just doing that, leaves a lot more people possible to be the killer other than Kurumi, because the window is so big you wouldn't know when he died, you wouldn't know how long it's been between him dying and you finding him, and a lot of people would not have alibis. And eventually, that's how they catch her. They catch her because they figure out, wait a minute, nobody else could have set this up. And they're right. If she didn't set up anything to begin with, she probably would have gotten away with it.
Alright, yeah, and also, the execution for Kurumi, I love her execution. It's probably my favorite in the series.
I don't know if I would go that far, but it's definitely a high-ranking one for me.
Yeah, I was thinking that there are two things about it that I didn't really like. Well, the thing that I didn't really like was her motive. I didn't care for that. I
like her motive, I just don't like her backstory because it sounds not possible. A high schooler should not be the prime minister. That's not how that works.
Yeah, she is just the prime minister, and it's like they realized, wait a minute, we haven't made this emotional like the other two yet. Let's just make her the most important person in the game.
Make her the most, like, effectively the most powerful person on Earth. That's essentially what they did. Because of that, and the unreasonableness of that, and Kurumi, she would have gotten away with it if she just didn't do anything else. I think I'm gonna knock it down to B.
Alright, there is one more thing that I absolutely hate about this trial, and I know it's a small thing. You don't have to put up with it for that long.
It's Himiko, isn't it?
I fucking hate Himiko in this case.
Yep, I knew it. And I agree. Look, I get it. I understand that, like, chunis are considered cute in other cultures. They're cute in moderation. You have to understand, like, imagine you were in this scenario. Imagine you were one of those kids at the trial, and you were thinking, hey, we all better cooperate, or we're all going to die. If there was one kid who kept bullshitting around it, at some point you would want to slap them and be like, snap out of it, this is serious, please stop fucking around.
I know.
Like you can legitimately get us all killed, please knock it off. This isn't a game anymore. Like, if the stakes weren't so high, I wouldn't be bothered as much by Himiko, but the stakes are so high that if they fuck this up, everyone is dead. It's one of those situations of just like, do you not realize how much danger we are in right now? Please be serious for a minute.
One thing that really bothers me is that this type of shit, it's not only in that case. It happens. I've seen it happen in Ace Attorney. And
yeah,
it happens.
It's actually a very common anime and game trope because, like I said, chunis are a very common thing in Japan.
Well, it's either that and also like the whole ideology of a magician never reveals their secrets. It will make me always dread having a magician character in a murder mystery game, because there is always a chance that there will be a murder that involves someone doing magic, and they won't tell you how it works because fuck you.
Yeah, the biggest reason why this is such a problem, I really want to emphasize the fact that in another situation, this really wouldn't bother me. I wouldn't be a fan of it, but it wouldn't annoy me. The reason it annoys me in Danganronpa V3 is because you're literally in a life or death situation here. Like, this is not the time to be fucking with people. You need to realize that, hey, me and all of my friends are in serious danger right now, and if we don't figure out what's going on here, we're not going to be alive in 10 minutes. And, like, there's a time and place for that kind of thing, and this is not it.
How long is this video?
It's gonna be very long.
Okay. All right. Well,
that pretty much sums it up. I'm leaving it in B because yeah, I agree. What it does right, it does very right. The kill was very well executed, very well planned. The body discovery is probably my favorite in the entire series, and it's just overall a very, very suspenseful, very thrilling chapter. Oh my god, we didn't talk about the best thing about this chapter.
Yes.
Insect meet and greet.
Right, I am so sorry.
I can't believe we forgot about that. That's the best part of the chapter.
How did we forget?
Oh my god. Gonta is such a precious soul, and I love him. I love him so much.
I love Gonta. I love Kokichi.
Gonta is my favorite character in V3. I'm gonna say that right now, and I'm no regret in saying that. I love him. He's such a pure boy.
Gonta is top 3 for me.
I think he's top 3 for me too. I think my top 3 are going to be Chihiro, Ibuki, and Gonta. I really like Gonta.
Gonta is not top 3 from the series, but he is top 3 from V3 for me. I said 3 a lot in that sentence.
It'd be like that sometimes.
Okay, yeah. Insect meet and greet, love it.
That was one of the funniest scenes in the entire game.
Yes. What do we want to go for next?
I think we'll start going kind of in order from this point, because those are pretty much all the ones that I really wanted to talk about. Like, actually, wait, no. There is another one that I really do want to bring up because of how much it does right, and just almost universally perfectly it handles it. And that's V3-5. Instant S tier. Instant.
Yes.
Like, it's not even a question. I don't even have to think about that. V3-5 is one of the most cleverly written chapters I think I've ever seen in a video game. It's so good.
Yeah, the only thing that drags it down a little bit for me is that it felt like the writers just said, okay, everyone likes 2-5. Let's take that and change it just enough so that people won't complain about it.
I see what you're going for with that, and here's my counter argument, where I absolutely see where you're coming from, don't get me wrong. I understand why people make that comparison. You're not the only person I've heard say that to. I've heard a lot of people make that argument, and I
definitely think you're different enough.
I don't really agree with it, and here's why. The only thing that's the same between these two chapters is the motive. That's it. They're both meant to just fuck with Monokuma and break the game. That's really the only thing that's the same between them. Almost everything else is very different.
Well, there's also the thing of, like, the character that's been antagonizing you for the entire game finally just flies completely off the rails, and then they die.
Yeah, I could see that. But, like, here's the thing.
And there's also, like...
It's the motivation sort of, and how they go about doing it that's similar. But almost everything else, like, it's not all that similar, really. Especially in the trial. Holy crap! I need to talk about that, because, my god, the trial in... I think I'm just gonna come out and say it. V3-5, if we're just basing it on the trials alone, without question, my favorite trial in the series. By far.
Fair.
The suspense in this chapter, I cannot understate how well written it is, because here's the thing. Kokichi, throughout the entirety of V3 up until this point, has been the character that's known for fucking with you. He's been, like you said, basically the antagonist of, like, the minor antagonist of the game. He was the Nagito of V3. But when he flies off the rails, it's not just in a way that you can not really predict, because, like, you can predict Nagito going fucking crazy, and the way that he goes crazy and the way he goes about it would still be surprising, but it still fits within his character. With Kokichi, not only does it fit within his character, it fits with the development of his character, because he grows significantly in the beginning of this chapter, to the point where he feels almost like a different character. He's still fucking with you, but, like, the way he's directing that has changed. He's now not just fucking with you, now he's fucking with the master. Now he's fucking with the person who's setting all this up. He's still doing what he does, but it's not directed at you anymore. And I think that's what makes it so clever. Another thing that I really, really like, and I really can't understate how well this is pulled off, because if you had explained to me how this chapter goes down on paper before I had played it, I would have told you that this would have been very predictable, and I knew exactly where it was going from the start. But something that this chapter, and this trial especially, does better than not just any other trial in the game, but better than almost any other game I've ever played, it constantly keeps you guessing. There was not a single time until the end reveal where I was sure of which one it was. Never. Every time I thought I knew, somebody would bring up something and I'd be like, that doesn't fit. That doesn't make sense. And then I would flip-flop. I would be like, it's gotta be him. There's no way it's not. And then somebody else would bring something up and be like, that doesn't work either. It keeps you guessing in a way that you're never really sure. And it's a very easy trap to fall into with this kind of writing of, like, if you're flip-flopping between which one of something is the truth, it's very easy to accidentally let something slip and give away which one it is immediately. And it's very easy for it to do that. But this chapter doesn't. It keeps it very, very well hidden up until the reveal. And you never know. You're never positive until you see it for yourself. And that's something that alone, if it wasn't for everything else that this chapter does right, that alone would put it in S tier. Because the suspense is just unmatched. It's incredible at doing that.
I'm gonna be honest, I did not really have the same experience as you. I didn't figure it out, but my thought process was, they're both dead, and that's gonna be the reveal at the end of this chapter, and the person in this exisal isn't either of them. I thought for a while that that's where they were going with it too, but
I
thought the entire time until the end that that's what it was gonna be.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. That just kind of further emphasizes my point of, like, they do a really good job at hiding it. They never give away too much, and that's something that, like, other chapters and just the entire series tends to do a lot. They give you just a little bit too much information where, even if at the beginning you don't exactly know, about halfway through the trial, you can say, I know where this is going. But V3-5 does not do that. You don't know for sure until it's over.
And then there's Kaito's execution.
Yeah.
I love it. I love Kaito's execution.
Let me talk about that for a moment, too. My god, the character development in this chapter is phenomenal. It's foreshadowed throughout most of the game, and it actually pays off really well. Kaito is basically dying, and that is established as early as chapter 3. And it not only does it go somewhere, it furthers his character. It makes him a more relatable character as to what he's doing and why he's doing it. It gives him a understandable reason to go along with Kokichi's bullshit, and the effect that all of this has on Maki is insane. All of the character dynamics and development that happens in this chapter are amazingly well written, and it makes Maki one of the best characters in the game, it makes Kaito one of the best characters in the game, it makes Kokichi one of the best characters in the game. all of the
I
reveals.
already thought he was the best character in the game.
I didn't think he was.
That just moved him up to double S tier.
Yeah, I didn't think he was as high as a lot of people do. I do think he's a little bit overrated. I don't hate him, but I didn't love him. I liked him, but I didn't love him. V3-5 made me love him. It really did. If the only thing that we can think of to complain about this chapter is where it got the idea, that says a lot about the quality of the chapter overall.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm putting it in the top of S tier specifically for that reason.
Like, I have it placed a bit lower, not because of the negatives. It's just a testament to how great the others are.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, so yeah, that pretty much covers V3-5. So let's move on.
We've covered the last two in the series. Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay. So, Danganronpa 1 is a weird experience, and the reason that I bring this up is because it kind of sets trends for the series overall that not only do you not know they're going to be trends, but like it bucks those trends before they're even established. And a really interesting case of this is Chapter 5. I don't know where to put this. I genuinely don't. I can see this as far down as D. I can see it as maybe S, but I think I wouldn't go higher than A. This could go really anywhere in the middle. Because there's a lot that it does really well, and there's a lot that it kind of falls short on, but the things that I think it falls short on aren't really that chapter's fault. It's just because it's things that games later in the series would do again, but better. Because 2-5 and V3-5 both do a somewhat similar thing, where like you don't know who was involved, even though like one of those things should be blatantly obvious. But the thing is that it doesn't do it badly, but the other two just do it so much better.
Okay, I have it in C.
I think that's fair. I think that's where I'm gonna put it too, actually.
Mainly, the reason why I have it in there is because it kind of feels rushed, and I know it's intentional, but it makes it a lot less compelling than it would be otherwise.
I agree. I honestly agree.
And the fact that it's supposed to be that way makes it not a D tier case for me. It's executed well, but the idea isn't my favorite.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and it's one of those situations where the fault of it lies not in the chapter itself doing anything wrong, but just the chapter in concept isn't the best idea. And
yes,
like it handles it as well as it could have with what it's been given. That's the best way I can explain it.
Right.
If I was told to write something under these conditions, I don't think I'd be able to write anything better than that. It does the best it can with what it has available. And I think it's really hard to fault it for that.
It's a not great idea that's executed the best it could be.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe Chapter 5 of the first game. It's just... It works, and it's okay, but if they had tried something else, it could have been something way better.
I think the build-up to the body discovery was really great.
I agree. I think that was really good.
That was my favorite part, where you have everyone like disassembling Monokuma,
yeah,
and it seems like he's just gone, and you just start.
So refresh
and doing whatever the hell you want.
Refresh my memory here. He doesn't show up again until like the body discovery, right? Like I don't remember when he disappears, and I don't remember when he comes back.
Monokuma, I think he disappears at some point around the time where Makoto has the fever dream.
Yes, you're right.
And then like they find the key to the data center next to Mukuro's body,
and he like takes
in
it
there, and then Monokuma just sort of casually enters the conversation, and no one thinks anything of it, and then reality sets in, and they're like, "Wait, what?"
yeah, that I remember.
He just sort of appears. I jumped.
Yeah, I actually now that I'm thinking about that, I didn't even remember that happened until you brought it up. But I think that was also really, really well handled. It's one of the best Monokuma moments in the series, as far as I'm concerned, just because you know he's gonna come back. It's just what he does. You've seen him blow up in the first chapter, and he just walks in like nothing happened. Like, you know he's not gone. But, like...
Hiro just sort of asks an offhanded question, and Monokuma pops up with an answer, and he's like, "Oh, well, thank you for Wait!"
Yeah. It's really well... And I think what makes that work so well is because it's not foreshadowed at all. It just kind of happens. Like, and everyone was, like, talking just before this about, like, wow, sure is a good thing Monokuma's not here, otherwise we wouldn't have been able to get into this room. And so when he shows up, you're just like, excuse me, he's right there.
It wouldn't have worked nearly as well if he had shown up at any of the moments where the characters are, like, vocally happy that he's not there.
Yeah, because it would have been too obvious. It would have been guys like, "Oh, you didn't think it was that easy, would you?" Like, it's unceremonious as hell. It's the most non-grand entrance. He just shows up to mundanely answer a question.
That's one of my favorite moments from him, but I still have it in C because of the reasons that mentioned earlier.
Yeah. It did the best with what it's been given, but what it's been given isn't the best idea. That's the biggest issue. And one thing I will say about Chapter 5, and I think this is... even though I said earlier that it does this and the other games do it better, I really like the fact that you don't really know about Mukuro until this chapter. I actually think that was very clever.
What do we want to go to next?
I think next we could talk about Chapter 1-1. It's the start of the series, so it's kind of
That's what I was thinking
basic.
when I said go back to the beginning, and then you said Chapter 5, and I was like, well, this was not what I was going for, but okay.
I thought you meant the first game.
I didn't mean the first game, but I also meant the first chapter.
Well, now let's talk about the first chapter.
Because we haven't talked about any of the first chapters yet.
I think I'm gonna put this chapter in B.
I have it in C.
I think I know why, but let me hear it from you before I say my suspicions.
It's pretty bare bones, and that's fine, but... Okay, 11037 made it way too obvious.
Yep, I knew you were gonna bring that up. Yes, and I agree. And here's the thing. I wholeheartedly agree with that, and that is the reason it's not any higher than B. Because there are things in this chapter I think are handled very well. I think the body discovery is very shocking, even though you kind of see it coming. I think the way it's handled is very, very surprising. Being the first one, it definitely catches you off guard. But I think what I really like about this chapter, and what pushes it up to B for me, is Sayaka. I really, really like how far they dive into her motive and what exactly she did. And it's a situation that, as far as I can remember, I don't think any other game has done this, where the person who planned to kill ends up being the victim. Other than the times where the killer is the victim. As far as I remember, I think this is the only time where the tables turn. And it's actually done really well.
But I also think it's not helped by the fact that Leon and Sayaka are... Like, when you look back on the chapter, it becomes blatantly obvious that they were written from the beginning to be the characters that die quickly.
Yes, and that's another thing that kind of knocks it down. I might even knock it down to C for that, actually. Because Leon is a very, very basic character. Like, there is not much to him other than baseball guy. His character is baseball guy.
Actually, I don't think you're giving him enough credit there. Like, there is the whole thing about him not actually liking baseball and wanting to be a musician instead.
Yeah, but that doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And if anything, it does the opposite of go there, because he incorporates baseball into how he carried it out. He doesn't incorporate music into how he did it. So if anything, they backpedaled on that.
Actually, now that I think about it, makes me like it more. Is why Sayaka targeted him specifically is because he wanted to be a musician.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. You're right.
And she already was one, so she could, like...
She could help him.
That's something that she could talk to him about.
That didn't even cross my mind, but that's a really clever touch. I don't even know if that was intentional, but that is a nice touch. I think I'm gonna knock it back up to B. The positives of this chapter are decently positive, but they're nothing amazing. The negatives of this chapter are decently negative, but they're nothing that ruin it. So
yeah,
it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't have high highs or low lows. It's just a consistent level of middle of the road quality, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think B is a fair spot to put it, because neither of us really hate it. Correct me if I'm wrong in saying that.
I don't hate it.
I respect this chapter for what it does. I respect it for what it does well. I do think it has its faults, but the faults don't really hurt it too badly. Its highs aren't amazing, but it's not bad. It's really not.
It's a quintessential decent chapter.
Yeah. Which
is a great thing.
Which is fantastic for the first one of the series. That's why I'm forgiving most of its shortcomings.
Yeah.
Because if the first chapter in the series is so likably middle of the road, that's a good thing. That's a very good thing to introduce somebody to your franchise. And on that level, in that sense, it does that job very well. It does a very good job of introducing someone to the concept of how Danganronpa works.
There's another trial that I want to go to next, and it's one that I've wanted to talk about for this entire video.
Okay.
And I know that we don't agree on its quality.
It's V33, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. The more I'm thinking about it...
I want you to go first.
The more I think about it, the more I actually kind of agree with you about how predictable this chapter is. And because of that, I'm gonna put it in... I'm not gonna put it in... I don't know. It's either C or D.
Okay. I have it in F. I'm gonna explain why.
Okay.
It has, by far, the most missed potential out of any case in the series.
That is why it got knocked down so far for me. Because they introduced the idea of, what if there's two killers? And
yeah,
that could have had massive, massive implications on the remainder of the game. Because if it wasn't the same killer, they would have had to live with a murderer, knowing they did it.
Right. It's not just that. It's also the thing where Angie basically starts a cult with half of the cast, and that goes nowhere.
Yeah, that kind of does just drop as soon as she dies.
That literally... nothing happens with that. They try to make it a whole plot point, like she would only let members of her cult get into her lab, and then the killer wasn't even someone who was on the student council. Then there's the Necronomicon thing, which also goes nowhere.
Yeah. Another thing I don't like about this chapter, and I think I'm gonna put it in D instead of C because of this, but throughout the entirety of the build-up to the kill in that chapter, they're saying, oh, Necronomicon, this is your motive. They never explain why. All Monokuma says is, this is, you have a chance to revive one of your dead classmates, this is your motive. They don't explain why, and the reason that bothers me is because the cast outright starts questioning that. They start saying, wait a minute, we could go through with this. A couple of them actually want to, and a couple of them start planning to do so. Angie starts planning it. Kyo starts planning it. But then there's a couple of stragglers who are like, wait a minute, something's not right here. He called it a motive, and that's not a good sign. And because they never do the ritual, you never find out why that's considered a motive to begin with.
Oh yeah, and also because they do consider it a motive, and it's also the student council thing, you'd think that would tie into Kyo's motive for committing the murders, and it doesn't at all.
Yeah.
Even though I do like his motive, just because it's so fucking crazy.
That and one other thing that I'll touch upon later, is why I initially liked it so much, is because, my god, Kurikyo is arguably the most fucked up character in this entire series. And that's saying a lot.
He's my favorite one to like, ironically.
I like him unironically, but mostly just because I'm really into stuff like that. Like, I'm really interested in, taboo dark fiction, if that makes any sense. Like, I love it when things take an unexpected, really dark turn out of nowhere. And it's handled decently well. And it is in this case. It is, that the dark tone actually is handled pretty well. And I really like him for that. He's just a fascinating character. He's a very fascinating character, and his motive is what makes him interesting. I can guarantee you that if he did not have that motive, I would not remember Kurikyo for anything other than his face mask. Not to say that he's an unmemorable character, but this motive makes him exponentially more memorable. And that's what I really like about it. And the other thing that I think I really liked about this chapter, and again, this is a very personal thing, the atmosphere in this one is incredible. The seance scene is brilliant. I love that.
I liked it as well, but also,
here's my problem with it, though. It's fucking dumb. Like, in the context of a character doing this, it's stupid. This is another situation that made me think, if he had not tried to be so elaborate, he would have gotten away with it. If they did not investigate the seance room, which they only did because a second murder took place there, they would not have figured out who killed Angie.
Right.
If he had stopped, if he had set up that body discovery just the way he had, done everything exactly the same, the only thing he changed is if he stopped there and didn't try to do the seance. If he didn't go through with that, he would have gotten away with it, without a doubt. Because they had no idea, and that's why they started talking about Tenko in the first place, is because the discussion kept going in circles because they couldn't figure it out. And in the end, they figure it out because of a piece of evidence that they found while talking about Tenko. If he
Kyo just couldn't stay away from the seesaw.
Yeah. If he had just left it alone, they would not have discovered that. There would have been no reason for them to look in the seance room. None. They would have looked in there, yeah, but like, let's be real. They would not have looked under the floor. The only reason they did that is because Tenko was in a cage above said floor, and there was no other way in. If he didn't do that, they wouldn't have even looked there.
Then there's the victims themselves, which,
I'm just gonna be honest about this. I don't like Tenko, and I don't like Angie.
Yeah.
I did not really feel too hurt by their deaths, because I did not like those characters.
Himiko did, but after the shit she pulled in chapter 2...
it's kind of hard to relate to her after that. But yeah, God, Tenko is the kind of character that makes me feel insecure about being a man. And, like, I get that the whole joke with her is that she's an extremist and that, like, people aren't really like this. But something you have to keep in mind is that while, yes, they are very rare, people like that do exist. And they're very hurtful. She is the perfect stereotype of people who have that mindset and take it to an extreme to the point where it hurts people. And Tenko doesn't give a shit that it hurts people. And the reason that this bothers me so much is because
she doesn't count them as people.
Exactly. Is because she doesn't count them as people. And what makes that so hurtful is because it's a reminder that there really are people like that out there. They're not common, but they exist. I assure you, I've met them. They exist. And it is not fun to deal with them. It is very hurtful. It makes you feel bad about the way you were born. And it's injustice. There's no other word to describe it. It's no better than being a racist. And that's just not a likable character trait. It's not funny, it's just hurtful.
I just think it's fun to imagine if Tenko was a character in DR1 with Chihiro.
Yeah, that would be an interesting thing to see play out.
Her reaction would probably be something like, well, if I was born like that, I'd probably want to hide it too.
Yeah. Again, all the more reason that I don't like her, because again, this is a personal thing, but she makes me feel bad about the way that I am. And I don't like that. Because I can't help that I'm a dude. And Angie, I don't hate Angie as much as I hate Tenko. But I don't like Angie, and it's mostly because I am not keen on religious fanatics. Look, I don't want to get into it. This is another discussion that, like, is way too heavy for a video about a fucking video game. But, like, I don't like people who try to force their beliefs onto others. If you have your beliefs and they're different from mine, that's okay. I will respect that. The moment you try to change me is when we're gonna have a problem. And Angie does that to everyone, and it's very annoying.
There's two more things I want to mention, both good and bad. Start with the bad thing. Another piece of missed potential. At the beginning of the chapter, Monokuma gets overthrown by Monodam, and before the trial even starts, he just comes back.
Yeah, that is a good point. And honestly, this is another thing where I feel like V3's writing in general is just very, overall, not as good compared to the other games, and it's because I feel like the only reason they brought him back is because they came up with a plot thread that they didn't know how to answer otherwise. Like, the reason that he comes back in the first place is because somebody asks, what if there are two killers? And the Monokubs that are around are just like, we don't know! That's the only reason he comes back, is to explain that. And I feel like if they didn't have to answer that question to begin with, they probably wouldn't have brought him back until the trial, or even maybe after that. But, like, they had to bring him back for that reason, because they didn't have any other way to answer that question.
Case 3 is, like, the most obvious one in the game, where you can physically see the process of the writers throwing out ideas, running with them a little bit, and then realizing, wait, we don't know what the hell we're doing, let's get rid of it, but they still kept the parts that drove them to that point in the first place. It's like writing a paper and then realizing halfway through your paper that it doesn't make sense, and instead of backspacing or erasing it, you just keep going. Like, you acknowledge that you fucked up, and it's like writing, oh, never mind, at the end of a paragraph instead of deleting the paragraph. And then there's the thing I wanted to talk about that was good, and I know that I might be getting repetitive here, but I need to talk about how fucking brilliant Kokichi is here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. He
How
really
he can-
is one of the most fascinating characters in the game.
Okay, first of all, there's the "It's a Lie" scene.
Which one?
The
That's
one where-
almost all of his scenes.
The one where he even fools the mechanics of the game, and they start a body discovery scene, and he just picks his head up with the big grin plastered on, like, "It's a lie!"
Oh yeah. Yeah. That was one of my favorite moments, I think, in the entire game. Here's the thing. Danganronpa has conditioned us at this point to expect certain things. Them throwing a third body at you, you wouldn't put it past them to do that. So when you see them basically go for it, there's no reason to believe that it's not real. So I don't think I've ever seen a person see that scene and not fall for it. It gets people every time.
I think the thing that would have made it better is if it was literally anyone that wasn't Kokichi.
That's the thing, though. It wouldn't have worked with anyone else. He purposely laid there on the ground and waited for people to come out. Nobody else would have done that.
Yeah, but like, that's
maybe
what
Kaito. Maybe Kaito. He might have.
Maybe he would do that.
But like only to be like, hey, I'm just messing around to raise your spirits kind of thing.
And then there's also the way he interacts with Mew in the trial, which
yeah.
is
It's
like,
it's
like,
a
he's
little
always
excessive
funny
for my
interactions, but he's even more so here.
Yeah, it's a little bit excessive for my taste, but it is definitely funny. I'll give it that. Anyway, next one. We haven't talked about Danganronpa 2 in a while, and I think it's about time we discuss the first chapter in this game, because there's a lot of things that I like about this chapter, and a lot of things that I really don't. And I know a lot of people, from what I have seen at least, really like this one.
Me included.
Yeah, I like it. But I don't think it's as great as a lot of people say it is.
I have it in A.
I think that's fair. I was thinking either A or B. I think I'm gonna put it in B, honestly. Because, actually, you know what? No, A. Because what this chapter does right, it does very well. It establishes right off the bat that Danganronpa 2 is gonna be a lot crazier than the first game. From Nagito basically losing his shit, to Byakuya coming back and not being Byakuya.
I'm gonna be honest, the way they revealed that Fat Byakuya was an imposter.
See that. But okay, so let's talk about what this chapter did right. First of all, it does a fantastic job at introducing the characters and the tone. Because, like, the whole, I don't know if I would call it the gimmick of the game overall, but, like, one of the biggest gimmicks in Danganronpa 2 is Nagito. And this is where he starts losing his shit. Like, it establishes very early on that just because he exists, this game is not gonna work the same as the first one. It makes sense with his character because you kind of feel like something's off about him from the beginning, but it takes until you witness it to realize just how fucking nuts he is. And piecing together what he does in that trial and his motivation, especially his motivation, oh my god, it's kind of insane. Like, how drastic of a change all of this is from the first game. And that tonal shift is remarkably dramatic.
Another thing that I really like is the motive and the way...
Okay, question.
I especially love the way it ties into the first game.
Which motive? Do you mean Nagito or do you mean Teruteru?
I mean Teruteru.
Okay.
I especially love the way it ties into the first game where the killer wasn't actually the one who instigated the incident.
Yes, I agree. He didn't instigate it, but he also didn't... Here's the thing. Where Leon kind of went out of his way, and they make a big deal of this in the trial while they're trying to implicate him. Leon kind of went out of his way to kill Sayaka. Like, it wasn't just self-defense. It was like, oh god, I escaped, but let me go back and kill her too. Like, it was premeditated, at least in that sense. Teruteru didn't mean to kill Byakuya, or whatever the hell you want to call him. He didn't mean to do that. Even when he went through with it. While he was in the process of going through with it, that's not what he meant to do.
Yeah. He made a mistake and killed the wrong person.
It was basically an accident. It was essentially an accident.
And also his reason for wanting to commit a murder in the first place was very sympathetic.
Very.
It's really simple, but it definitely...
It's simple, but it works. It's impactful.
Yes. It's very effective, and it's nice to see someone like Teruteru actually having a backstory that you can sympathize with.
This is a thing that other characters in the game, in the series, have kind of had before, but I really like actually establishing a connection between the characters and their families on the outside world. This is something that's been done for plenty of others. It's most notably for Mondo and Makoto, but like, and to an extent also, and yeah, Fuyuhiko and Kaito, but it's not a unique thing to him, but it's still touching. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the first time that a motive actually has to do with the family directly? I think it is.
I think so too. Alright, let's talk about what you don't like. Because I'm gonna be honest, I have no clue what you're talking about.
What I don't like...
Oh, wait, I think I figured it out.
What?
I think it's probably Mikon.
Actually, no. That is a thing that I don't like, and that's not a discussion for this video. That's for another tier list, another day. And I will bring that up, don't you worry. But I don't like Teruteru. I know I just spent the last, 10 minutes talking about everything I liked about him, but...
None of us like Teruteru, but...
He's relatable, but I don't like him. He's a relatable character that I just don't enjoy the presence of. He's just very uncomfortable. He's the opposite of Mikon, where he's literally just going around sexually harassing people. So when he does die, and when he does have a motive revealed, it's not as impactful as he could have been if he was a likable person before this.
Right.
It downplays how impactful his motive could have been. It would have been a lot more meaningful if I had grown to like him before that was explained.
Okay, I agree with this. I agree with what you're saying.
Because everything up until that point, he is the most unlikable guy. He is such an asshole. He's the kind of person that in a group situation, I would make every opportunity to avoid. And that makes his death a lot less impactful than it could have been.
Literally, the first thing you see him doing is trying... How should I put this? I'm gonna try to put this delicately. He's trying to appropriate the suck from Sonya.
Yeah. Quite forcefully, might I add.
And he also just straight up exposes Peko for having a black thong.
Yeah. I don't like how harassy he is. And I feel like that really does just hurt the chapter overall. I like almost everything else about it, and I think that's why I put it up to A tier rather than B. But Teruteru is just not a likable character.
Also, I like how, despite the fact that it's the first one in the game, they're willing to be...
What I meant before when I was talking about how, Nagito just kind of existing, his presence already just kind of makes things batshit insane from the beginning. And
it's not just him, it's also because of the murder itself. The way it was done.
Yeah. Like, the whole point of the setup of the murder was to avoid a murder, and it ended up causing one.
Then there's also the giant meme that is meat on the bone.
I forgot about that until you brought it up. Oh, meat on the bone.
Okay, yeah, let's move on to something else.
So yeah, chapter 1 and 2, decent. Would have been a lot better if the character in question wasn't the most hateable fuck in the game. But it is what it is. Other than that, pretty good.